They're all wow, 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 unbelievable. What a night, what a situation, what a game. There's a lot going on, no question about it. We're going to talk about all of it. Indiana just won. They beat Miami. It was close. It came down to the fourth quarter. It came down to almost the last few minutes right there. I was going to say last drive, but not quite, sort of, but not exactly. Unbelievable game. We're going to talk about it. We have to talk about it. It's just so amazing, no question about it. And it's just great. It's just great. We don't doubt it. We don't doubt it. We like it a lot. So this quarterback, this team, I mean, you have to give it to them. You really, really do. There's just no question about it. You have to respect the situation because they've never won before. They've never won before, and it just was unbelievable. You have to, I mean, you gotta give it up. You gotta give it up. You gotta give your hats off to them. A huge win by Indiana. Let's go to some of that right now. We have a lot to talk about here. We're not going to go too long, but we're definitely going to cover a range of subjects right here. I'm trying some different technical stuff here. We've got some different things down in here. Let me see. I've got so many different tabs open up here. Let's go here. Okay. And let's go back here. 1 second. And I mean, look at this. I mean, it came down to it. The number 10 team versus the number 1 team, Indiana Hoosiers. They go undefeated. It is absolutely incredible. This is ESPN right here. And I mean, you had points on the board early right here for Indiana, and Miami's blanked. And it wasn't looking good. The first half was kind of a little, I won't say, it was a shutout. I wouldn't call it a blowout. It was a shutout. However, Miami came back. They had the scheme. They were in the game. They were doing stuff. They were putting points up. They put more points up in the second half. But I mean, this quarterback, Mendoza, unbelievable. That run, that is just like a historic run, shows balance, toughness, everything like that. The defense, you can't say enough about the defense. Defense on both sides was very strong, but the defense of Indiana really stepped up. There's no question about it. We're going to talk about it. There's definitely little bits that we're going to talk about. We're going to play. I mean, it's just incredible. I want to know for the Indiana fans out there that you had Mark Cuban at the game. It was down here in Miami. It was just an incredible game. There's just no question about that. Let me see what I can find here. I've got different things here. Hold on. I've got to see. I've got so many different. Yeah. Here we go. John Gruden, Barstool Sports put this up. I mean, this was it, right? This was the run out, and you can't, which there's so many different elements here of what did which one really was the play that caused them to win. You could always look at, but I mean, this play right here. I mean, he takes off, from scrimmage. What is that? About 13 yards out, whatever. He's back in the pocket. He's almost to the 20-yard line right there. And this play right here, he sees it. He scrambles. He sees this breaking down right here. And I mean, at what point now here, look, Mendoza's right here. You've got coverage right here. He sees this. He feels the pressure right here. At this point, at what point he probably sees his receivers, or they're not there yet. They may be covered up. It's not happening. And at what point does he make the decision? He's probably looking for something here. He's a little bit worried right there. He feels that pressure coming right there. Probably sees that opening right here, and then it's going to go right in here. Okay, sees that opening right there, goes. And look at this. Let's play that real time right here. Let me make sure I'm throwing that down. Okay, so right there, and look at this. Feels that coming up. I don't know why. He probably felt like he was going to be caught right there. I don't know why he goes this way. Maybe he thought about it. That's very interesting. So there, he probably feels like this guy's going to be peeled off. And look how fast, these guys close the distance right here. I mean, just look at this guy. Look how fast this guy comes in right here. Boom. Okay, so now, we'll play it real speed right here. Oh, look. Oh, that's what it was, right? So he found the seam right there. Very interesting. Okay, so he found the seam right there. Boom, takes off. Oh gosh, contact really on both. You've got double contact right there. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of lesser quarterbacks, it would be over. They would be punked. They would be down. Like, forget about it. It's a done deal, right? But I mean, Mendoza has the wherewithal, and we're going to see that spin move right here. Boom. See, they try to pull him down right there. Look at that. Tries to pull him down right here. Got a lot of contact. Spins, and bam, look at that touchdown. I mean, unbelievable. That's just one element right there. Gruden puts that up. Super Mendoza, no doubt about it. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible, that kind of play. And that was emblematic. There's other stuff out there. I'll leave you to, go to ESPN, their sites, and the different, stuff out there for some of the clips. But I mean, wow. What a game. What an incredible game. Toughness on both sides, big plays on both sides. Beck was coming down and he was doing it. He went long, he went big, but that last interception, he could have been the hero in some ways. If you look at that, let's go back to that box score for a second. You look at that box score. I mean, Mendoza had more yards, had more passing yards here, right? They have more rushing yards, but had that turnover right there. So, had a passing TD, had the turnover. It really was that defense of Indiana that stepped up. It was obviously a whole team, but they're a complete team. They're a complete team in most respects. And it just was an exciting game. I think that was really, really great. So that was a big game, no doubt about it. Their first win. You got to give the hats off to them. Indiana grads out there around the nation or even globe are going to be happy. I think that was an awesome game, and that was pretty fun. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And so now let's talk about. There's a lot of places I can go with this, and I'll probably end up doing a show maybe tomorrow or the next day as well, and we'll get into more detail. Let me just close a couple of things here that I don't need anymore, just to get that a little bit cleared up. Where do I want to go first? Let's touch this real quick. The Trump first year is coming up, right? That's coming right up here. And we're going to talk about where we're at with the 1 year anniversary. What's it looking like? How, what's looking for 2026, the midterms, all this stuff, politics. There's so many things going on here, right? Domestic policy, foreign policy, everything like that. One of the things that's happening domestically that we definitely need to talk about is the whole situation in Minnesota with the ICE situation. We had the incident, before that was definitely a lot of news coverage around that tragedy. A lot of different people took different sides. Over the weekend, now there's been different things happening. ICE is going on trying to do enforcement. They've been saying, look, we're trying to get criminals. We're trying to enforce the laws on the books. Discussion with, the mayor, the governor, all that type of stuff. We had the video with Nick Shirley. We had, that kind of situation going on there. So really, Minnesota has been like a national focus here for a while. That did not stop this weekend. We had a situation involving a church. And Don Lemon was in there. I think it was I don't want to mischaracterize this, but there were protesters that came into this church. It got kind of crazy. This was really uncool, in my opinion. Let me see okay. And I think Colin Rugg put this up. I think this is Don Lemon. I think this was his show. Okay. No, that's a different one. Sorry. Excuse me. 1 second. Let's see. Where do I have this? Okay. Let's put this up right here. Okay. And then, there's different things here. So different people put up different things here. I don't know who, I'm not endorsing anyone to put anything up. I have no idea about, almost any of these accounts. But let's show, there's some footage right here. Now, this was in the church, Sunday Mass, Christian church. Don't know the specific denomination or anything about this a church or anything like that. But you can see here, you've got protesters in there. You've got parishioners over here. I'm not going to play the sound, but we're like, you can see some of this. They're agitated. These protesters are here. They're getting, up in there, and it's very disruptive. This is in the middle of services, and you can see this back and forth, back and forth. It just continues to go right here. This is in the middle of services, and people are trying to be at church, and there's different things. Let's see if we can get maybe a little bit of sound here.
The civil rights movement was about.
That's still Don Lemon talking about the civil rights movement. I mean, it's just in the so. I mean, imagine that. Now, think about that for a second. Okay, think about that for a second. First of all, and I don't want to be, do the whataboutism or anything like that, but I dare say that what would the reaction be if this was another religion that this happened to? Let's say this happened in a mosque, a temple, or something like that. That how would we feel? Or how would that go? How would that go over? What would people say about that? What would the news coverage be in that respect? Or this happened at, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter the denomination. It could be, a Buddhist temple. It doesn't, right? I mean, yes, you've got freedom of speech, but people also have freedom of religion. And again, your rights stop when you're in violation of my rights and stuff like that. And you go to church, and again, I don't want to get to, whatever. I mean, but you go to church, you're there to pray, you're practicing your religion, whatever your religion is. And you've got these protesters that show up, and then you've got Don Lemon doing like a video. I don't know if it's a live stream or it's a video. I mean, former CNN anchor. I mean, it's just a bizarre situation. Right. And again, I don't want to do the whole outrage thing. And, this was worse than that. And again, the whataboutism type of stuff. But it does. I mean, it's a wild scene, dude. I mean, why is that okay? Now, I believe that Harmeet Dillon of Justice, put something out there. I've got to double check that. I could be wrong. Again, not alleging any facts, not casting aspersions. All my personal opinion only. Talk about news events, public policy, public figures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I just don't understand, like, how people feel that they can impede law enforcement, how they feel like, I mean, the left is committed to this, like, resist type of thing. And before, like, what, a little bit over a year ago, the law was a law and all this type of stuff. And we're going to frog march President Trump. And we had all these different cases going on and everything like that. And now it's funny how now it's turned. Now law enforcement, are they, the perception are they trying to do some, is the feeling different out there? Like, is the propaganda different? It's very interesting. So it looks very political in terms of the coverage, in my opinion, potentially on some of this. And not getting into, I don't want to get into all the specifics. And, I didn't do that about, the other incident and stuff like that. And we're going to get into some of the polls, because I think the polls sort of reflect more or less where I'm at. Whereas, people are trusting Republicans on immigration. They want the border shut down. They want some immigration enforcement, but some people are uncomfortable with, how some of this is going down. Now, I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just trying to express the politics of it and the optics of it and the media coverage of it, in my opinion. And to that extent, I think there was a commentator, and I can't remember. I would love to give credit. I can't remember off the top of my head immediately, because I've watched so many different sources. I've been trying to get all kinds of different sources on stuff and really broaden the scope here, just to hear different voices and stuff. But I think one of the commentators out there is like, look, this is the Democrats' plan to make this as loud, as noisy, as messy as possible to try to shift public opinion on their side. And I think that is this church situation along those lines? I don't know. I mean, so I don't think that was a good look. I really don't. I don't think that was a good look at all. I don't think that was the way to go there. Now, I will also go. So we may or may not come back to some of that, but that had happened over the weekend there, and that was pretty intense, right? And so people are talking about that. So I think that there's a lot of reaction to that. A lot of people are talking about that. Now, Greenland, I'll just throw this out there really quickly. I don't know what, I mean, we'll see where, well, let me do this first before we go to Greenland. We have this from Colin Rugg put this up there, and I watched this live. I may have been like a minute or two behind on the DVR, but Mendoza, Indiana University quarterback, Mendoza, he had comments after the game. I'll just give all glory to God. And I heard this and I replayed it. And this is very interesting right here in terms of this full circle moment. He was a 2-star high school recruit coming out of high school. I declined a walk-on offer to the University of Miami. Full circle moment here, and he comes back and wins out here. So that's wild. Walk-on, you never know what's going to happen, right? You don't you might have a chance. You don't have the scholarship all set up, things like that. If I think I have that right. I may be wrong. I may be totally wrong on that. I'm not alleging anything. I'm not a college football scholarship expert by any stretch. But basically, that's what was his statement there. So that was very interesting comments right there after the game. So I thought that was very cool, very interesting. And look, I mean, he's riding high now, no doubt about it. Hold on, I'm having a problem with one of my ears here. Probably have to just go with one headphone for a second. So that was really, really a great game, like I said. Now, going back to this situation here, let's talk about Greenland for a second. You have Mike Pence. You're seeing very interesting reactions to Greenland. And to some extent, it's a little bit emblematic of sort of the larger conversation of foreign policy versus domestic policy, where people are at right now. Okay. And I think we're going to get back to that. We'll also talk about the wealth tax a little bit. We're just going to go through a bunch of stuff very, very quickly, very high level. I do apologize. I'm trying to fix I'm having some pain in one of the ears here. So I want to try to attend to that a little bit and keep going here. Let me see where this is here. I just got to find that here. Is this? Yes, this is it. 1 second. And let's put this up. Mike Pence was on with Jake Tapper, State of the Union. He said, "Oh well, I don't know if we should do it this way or whatever like that." And he had some different comments and maybe his own opinion on it. But in terms of this pull quote right here, quote, "What the president is trying to do here is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America." Interesting, very interesting. So I mean, to have Mike Pence say that, and again, you're seeing some. Not super surprising, right? Because whether it's Lindsey Graham and you have different people, there are some people that are more, in favor of a more engaged foreign policy than others. And I think that, to some extent that we're having some consistencies with those kind of policies. So I think that's kind of where Mike Pence at this point is landing on some of those things. So, but does that surprise you given, some of Pence's other comments in the not so distant past, in my opinion? Now, if we look, there's another thing I want to throw out here in terms of Team 47 and stuff like that. And you look at the Maha Coalition, and I'm not saying Dr. Makari, who formerly of Hopkins, professor of the medical school and at the business school. I'm an alumni of the, full disclosure, I'm an alumni of the MBA program there and the Master Communication program. So the Krieger Advanced Academic Program and the Carey Business School. And so, you've got a team there, Dr. Oz, obviously Secretary Kennedy, RFK Jr., and you also have Dr. Marty Makari, and they are just doing a great job, in my opinion. You've got a situation here with Dr. Makari and I'll play this here, public domain here, and we'll put this up here. This is, I believe, official account, Dr. Marty Makari, FDA. And here we go. And let's play this sound right here, and I'll let that play full. And I think this is very cool. Now, this is just one thing, but I mean, the approach, I think, with the health thing, with the new nutrition, got pyramid, everything like that. I mean, they're just doing they're just doing so many different things that I think it's really science based. I think they're really making a lot of it. Let's play this right now. A lot of great moves.
I'm proud to report this year in 2025, this past year, we hit
hold on a
100% of our.
I knew. Okay, 1 second. Let me just. I apologize. I was a little bit afraid of that. Let me set the sound up here right to make sure that's coming through over here. And we're doing that right. 1 second here. 1 second here. I'll get this thing handled here. Let's see. Is it going to behave itself? It does not want to cooperate at this point. Okay. There's going to be a little bit of an echo. I definitely apologize for that. I should have set this up a little bit better ahead of time. I'm going to try this one more time. Come on, can we? I'm probably going to have to play it through this. So there'll be a little bit of an echo, and I do apologize for that. Okay. Yep. I'm not going to be able to switch that up right now. Okay. It is what it is. So here we go. We got a little bit of an echo, and I'll turn this over here so you can hear that a little bit better.
User fee target dates. That is, the trains were all running on time. That every accept or reject decision by the FDA was consistent with the accept or reject decision by the primary review team. That is, we're not doing secret deals. We're not messing with things. We are standing by our scientists. And last month, we had a record number of.
I don't know if that's playing or not. I hope that's playing. I hope you heard some of that. Well, you could see, and that's the nice thing. You can see what he's saying there on the, right here on the, I'll just turn that down just to make it easier. You can see what he's saying right here with the captions. And what he's basically saying is, look, we're on target. We've been on time for the accept or reject decisions, and whatever the reviewing board says, we follow that. So there's nothing, I'll let him speak for himself. But basically, like, they're really leaning in on the science. They're getting the job done, and they're doing the job over there in the FDA. And I think that that's great. And there's no like, I think what he's saying is these are not politically based decisions. These are health and science based decisions. And that's what I believe. What he's saying, I may be incorrect, but that's what I believe that he's saying, in my opinion. So I think that that's great. And then I think that people are going to look, and this is really what some of the themes are. It's going to come down to the results, right? It's going to come down to the results. And I'll try one more time to see if I can get this right in terms of the set up the sound here. I don't think so. I should have done that before. So it is what it is. That's I do apologize on that. So it's going to come down to the results of this administration. This year is going to be so important, super crucial, in my opinion. This is going to be a very crucial year. So where are people at on this? Where do people stand on this? Oh, here's the other thing now, and I'll highlight a couple things here. There are some concerning aspects with the polls, and we'll wind down here pretty quickly. It's probably a 35-minute show, probably. There are some concerning aspects with the polls. But there's also some political things that are going to help Republicans. I think that there's an acknowledgement. Governor Shapiro had some very interesting comments on the New York Times in regards to his vetting by the Harris campaign. And I'll refer you to his comments on that for your own review and examination. There also has been a story with this wealth tax, and this wealth tax is not going over, a proposed wealth tax, whatever, is not going over well in Silicon Valley by any stretch of the imagination. And Chamath has been, Chamath Palihapitiya, who I hope sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Chamath, formerly of Facebook, billionaire, All In podcast, bestie, everything like that, okay, has been posting on this. I posted a lot on this. And you can look at these comments right here, talking about the union, and they're calling it now. They're saying it's an asset seizure tax as opposed to the wealth tax, right? That's so it's framing a certain way. And listen, I mean, people might look at property tax. You own it, now you're still paying tax on it for a house, right? And those are people that maybe they inherited that house as a family home and all that type of stuff, right? so a lot of people, and Governor DeSantis has been talking about the property tax, and people are looking at that type of things. But they're talking about the CEO of the union, and I guess one of these things was pushed by the unions for to help pay for healthcare for all or something. I don't know. And so here's what he's saying. Not sure how many people know this, but the San Francisco union is proposing fines for companies whose CEOs pay more than 100x their median employee. And then he's like, again, this is an asset seizure tax. Like in the asset seizure tax, the proceeds would be to pay for various services that could be funded if there was instead a focus on cutting waste. Okay. So people are saying, look, there's a lot of waste, and that's and I was talking about this and zero-based budgeting and making government more efficient and all that type of stuff in light of obviously the Doge efforts and the Nick Shirley video. Now, in addition to this over here, there's also been a story out of California, I believe here, and Trump, I think, put something out on this, right? And this is like the state of California has been ordered to return over $1 billion to the federal government after an audit revealed federal dollars being spent on healthcare for illegal aliens. And I think it was something like $1 billion. And I think it was like they were the biggest state by far. So here they are talking about the wealth tax and for, California to pay for healthcare. And here they are paying for, apparently, there's an order or something, or there's some kind of ruling or some kind of something, allegation, whatever. I don't know all the specifics. Okay. But I'll just say here, I'll just go off of what this is saying. Trump administration, California owes $1 billion for immigrant healthcare. That's a Fox News headline. And that says it's been, so now, I mean, that's directly talking about this kind of issue. That's very, very important. So, I mean, this is where the tension is going to be, right? There may be people uncomfortable with the enforcement, right? There may be people unhappy with Trump. We're going to get to the polls here in a second. But what's the alternative? There may be people that want more or less engagement on foreign policy. And, we definitely have different visions of America going on right now, where we need to go and where we should go, and how policy should be conducted. But I think even people on the right, people talk about the right, they're disagreeing, and there's this kerfuffle on the right. Well, I mean, but now I think people are getting a little bit more of a focus on what's the alternative? What's really the alternative? Not super great, in my opinion, right, on a lot of this stuff. So I think that's where people have to really think about those aspects. And I think that's going to come into some focus this year as we look at the elections. But let's look at some of those polls really quickly. And this is just a very high level, and I'll probably go into more detail tomorrow and the next days on some of this stuff. But I think that's some of the stuff. Now, well, before I get to that, let's also put this up here. Fox, and I do apologize. I have so many. I'm just working on some technical things. I have so many different stories opened up here. Get this out of here. Minnesota AG dismisses FACE Act concerns after anti-ICE agitators storm church. I don't know what the FACE Act is. And I mean, there's just really a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, there's just a lot of things happening here. Okay. But it just shows you two very different visions and very different reactions out there to the news and the approach to policy at the least. Okay. So now let's go to some of these polls. Okay. Okay. Well, hold on. Now, I do want to show this, though. There are some on the Democratic side, whether it's James Carville or some others, that are understanding some of the political realities of some of these things. So you've got even the Atlantic. Welfare fraud is a problem for Democrats. Okay. So there are some that understand, like, this is not politically super great. Okay. And so it's definitely interesting to see what's going on out there and how this will play out. Okay. So now let's look here at some of these polls. There's different polls that are going on out there. We will quickly survey some of them. I think the CBS poll is pretty interesting, but let's start with this CNN poll. Okay, let's or am I gonna? Let's see. Let's do CNN poll right here. All right. So after the first, okay, so Greenland numbers fall. Let's see if we have some chart here. Too far is a unifying theme of Trump's first term. And this is the thing, like people don't want a lot of conflict. And this is sort of the brilliance of, and Joe Rogan talked about this, maybe the Democrats' plan or the pro open borders plan is once you let those people in here, and this is just one example, right? How do you, honestly, it's the same thing with tariffs. It's the same thing with foreign aid or engagement or whatever like that. Once you have a pattern and practice of doing something, you can have 80% tariffs, 30% tariffs, 20% tariffs, 10% tariffs, and we have none. And that gets changed and people complain about that. You have 10 million people, 20 million people, whatever it is. Let's call it 10 million people, over the last 4 years, pre-Trump, that come in here. How do you get those people out? There's no easy way to do it, right? So here we go. The CNN poll finds the following percentages think Trump has gone too far in changing the way government works, deporting undocumented immigrants. But notice that these are bare majorities, okay? Using the military to achieve his goals. And this, I think, is a little bit more of a caution sign for Trump and the foreign engagements and stuff like that, because Greenland, Venezuela, Iran won, some of these other things, and people, Ukraine, and now they're talking about, another operation potentially in Iran. I think some military assets carrier groups or something are moving over there in that zone. And people are starting to those numbers aren't looking very good. Okay, cutting federal programs. So people, cut the waste, fraud, and abuse until it's the program that they want or whatever. And so presidential power, trying to leverage America's power over other countries. And that kind of goes to these two things, right? So now that's almost 60% in making change to cultural institutions. And okay, so very, very interesting there. Okay, foreign moves inspire a little confidence. It's a Greenland thing. So and there's so much different. Okay, let's see here. So many different polls and polling results here. So there's a lot of different things. That's CNN, right? So let's just see now. There's other polling out there, and let's look here at this poll. Now, this is the APNORC poll, and there's a lot of different things right here. Okay, skeptical of Trump's priorities, mostly focused on the right priorities, about an even mix, focused on the wrong priorities, don't know enough to say. And what they're saying is he's focused on the wrong priorities. Well, what have we been talking about lately? Venezuela, Greenland. Let's go to Iran, and you have some people on X. They're really like, oh yeah, they're that's, maybe foreign policy is their issues and stuff like that. And people are like, hey, what about affordability? What about jobs? There's people that don't platform this person, don't platform that person, whatever, or who's really a conservative and who's not, and who's in the movement and who's not, and who's MAGA and who's not, or whatever. But it's like, look, what's the alternative? New York City mayoral race. You look at Minnesota. You look at and go on down the list of the alternative. Chuck Schumer, AOC. Look at what Jennifer Welch has been talking on her podcast. I mean, listen, is this a warning sign for Trump and Team 47 that, hey, oh, by the way, you need to make some changes and focus on domestic policy and moving the ball right there. And I put a post up there that, donors, need to take a back seat to voters and Trump has to deliver on affordability, on jobs, and there's been a lot of moves, Micron and lots of investment here and everything like that. But there's been some other stuff with H-1B visas. That discussion's going on in Silicon Valley. Letting in tons of and again, let me rephrase that. I don't want to revise, extend those comments. Some have criticized Trump for, I think, upping the amount of Chinese nationals that are going to come over here, 600,000 to U.S. universities. Now, I think that Trump made a statement that, hey, they need that to be financially viable. There are a lot of universities that will international students pay full freight. But someone made a great comment, and that may be in for right now in these 4 years. You come over here in 4 years, but what about particularly with state schools, or even it doesn't even matter because a lot of these schools get federal funding, right, to some variety. What about the person who what about the family who has lived here the whole time and paid taxes the whole time, and their taxes are going to support these various schools and stuff like that? What about them? So I mean, it's you have to look at as we say in business, lifetime value, right? The lifetime value of the contribution of the various taxpayers and stuff like that to the various different schools. On the other hand, as I've said before, you can't be a world class. It's like having a world championship with one team. That's not a world championship. That's a national championship. You can't be a world class institution if you're not letting the world come over there. And we do want the best and the brightest from all around the world. So, like many things, as we say, as I learned in law school, a lot of times the answer is it depends, right? And so it's it's a matter of degree, and in a lot of ways it just definitely depends. But I think that this is what people are feeling, right or wrong, is that there's a lot of focus on these policies are focused on the donors and maybe focus on special interests and not so much focus on individuals, and particularly the younger generation, whether it's Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and others are feeling like they're left out in the cold. Now we have stay-at-home sons where they're, people up to 34 staying home, this and that, whatever. We have people talking about it's hard to get a date, hard to buy a house, all this stuff. And I think that's part of what this poll is speaking to. Now, maybe it's unrealistic to expect that a president, let alone 1 year in, is going to solve all these things when things have been going bad for a while. But I do think it is a warning sign that people elected Trump on these promises to, take it to the swamp, Doge, freedom of speech, America first, ending the foreign wars and engagement, stuff like that, and really getting jobs back and all this type of thing. And they expect that to be delivered. So, and I don't begrudge anyone for whatever their different interest is and stuff. And I recognize there's a lot of people that didn't vote for Trump and they have different priorities and they're not happy with the direction that things are going in. And that's a discussion, right? But that really doesn't dissuade the point. That even makes the point even more, which is there. And I was explaining this point to my little brother who couldn't join right now, but he could have joined earlier. But anyway, because we were talking about different things, and it's like, listen, here's the problem. You can't do everything. It's not so much that this isn't important or we don't want us to do this or support this ally or whatever it is. It's that there's limited amounts of, just like running a business when you start, there's limited amounts of capital. They call it political capital. There's limited amount of time, this and that, and focus and national attention and media attention and all that type of stuff. Or are you going to focus that on whatever, Venezuela, Greenland, or, name, and I'm just using those as examples that are in the news right now. Or you're going to focus that on, that there's a story here that I might get to, or I might have to get to it tomorrow, where, I supposedly Elon Musk put this up of and I don't want to say that, but there's not that many Republican professors that left in Yale anymore. And and I had a discussion online with a Stanford a professor at the law school about hey, because there were some different things, and I might show that. And we'll probably get to that really quickly. We're at the 38-minute mark right here. I'm going to go to the 45 minutes, and then I think that's about it for tonight. But we're the conservatives. So if conservatives can't get to school, can't get to the professors, these are law schools, if they can't get to jobs, and I think I've shown that before, where the AmLaw 100 is very heavily liberal in terms of donations and stuff like that, and we're seeing this with the universities. If people, and that goes back to the jobs, if people don't feel like they have freedom of speech, they don't have the jobs, and that is a big problem. Freedom of speech is crucial and cannot be violated and cannot be infringed for, other than in the absolute extreme, Supreme Court cases and stuff like that and whatnot. But I mean, I think, most people should be very, very heavily committed to free speech. We cannot, that's what I'm saying. People want the jobs. They want freedom, liberty, and prosperity. They want, and that has to be the focus. It has to be the focus of the policymakers and stuff like that. And that's where you need to spend that capital, because it's going to be hard to turn these things around. Again, look at the whole thing on immigration. This is not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. And again, I'm not taking a side one way or another on that. What I'm saying is, you've got to figure out where your focus is going to be and where you're going to be able to yield something. Okay. So now, and where it's going to be in 2026. There's also interesting things happening with the primaries and who Trump's endorsing. He endorsed a potential opponent of Senator Cassidy out there in Louisiana. We'll see what he says about the Texas race and things like that. But I just want to set that up. So I think that's very, very interesting right there. Now, going through this a little bit more, good, great, terrible. You can see some of that. So there's some really entrenched opposition here to Trump, and you got to get these numbers up, right? Worse off since Trump took office. Okay, I mean, that's somewhat worse off, much better off, not much different. That seems a little like somewhat much. Okay, but there's work to do there. You can see that there's definitely some work to do that. All right. Costs, healthcare, border security. So, you can see where these are going right here. Okay. And then, is he doing too much, gone too far? A lot of people feel like he's gone too far. So change is difficult, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the point I'm trying to make. Change was always going to be hard. This is why you have to be very smart about how you use your political capital, because it's never going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. So where do you want to put the emphasis? Where do you want to, use that political capital to try to make the gains that you need to make, right? As opposed to getting tied up in a long foreign war or foreign engagement, or whether it's, some cultural issues or whatever out there. And so I think that's what I would say on that, is people really want to see results, particularly on the economy and jobs, and they do not want to see freedoms encroached and stuff like that. Now, there's a CBS poll that I think is also very interesting here. Let's get to that. You can see there's a lot of data. In some ways, it reinforces what they've been saying, or it's different permutations. And in some ways, it's different. There's some, right? And so, okay, this is 1 year in. Americans call for more inflation focus from Trump. CBS News poll finds. Okay, and this was a recent poll here a couple of days ago. Anthony Salvanto, Jennifer DePinto, Fred Backus, Kabir Khanna. Okay, all right. So now we look through some of this. Focus on lowering prices, not enough. Almost 75% want to see lower prices and a focus on lower prices. And I agree. I believe in that. I believe that, to me, that poll feels accurate. Okay. I don't know. I didn't do the methodology. I mean, let me put that. Let me revise and extend that. Let me delete that. That result doesn't surprise me. Okay. That result doesn't surprise me. Okay. Is your income keeping up with inflation? No, it isn't. So that's what people are telling you. Trump administration focused on events overseas. Pretty broad, kind of vague as it's not even really specific. To me, this would be almost the most favorable, framing of it. Events overseas could be anything. Are we doing charity events? Are we doing restaurant? Right. So to me, the framing of that question is such that I think this is a pretty powerful result. Too much, 53%, right amount, 35%, not enough, 12%. So the not enough crew that want to engage and let's go to Iran and let's do more and Ukraine and all that, like, dude, it's not there. There was another poll that I talked about, where something like 70% of people did not want to go to war with Iran, and a majority of Republicans, and the highest number of that was no were independents. So it's just not there, dude. It's just not there, right? Going back over the first year, President policy made it better off. Okay, have made you worse off policies, about the same, better off. So that you can see huge work needs to be done here, right? This is where the focus needs: political capital, focus, time, effort. You need to focus on that. Federal Reserve, okay, independently, okay, so that's Federal Reserve stuff. How do you feel about the Trump's penance? Okay, has done more than you expected, about what you expected, less than you expected. You can see now Republicans are kind of happy, okay? They're pretty happy. This is kind of what we voted for, right? 10% or not, but in a close election, that 10% can be impactful. So, and okay, overall here now, you have here, okay, how does Trump make you feel? Okay, uneasy, frustrated. Top answers from Republicans: confident, satisfied. Okay, top from Democrats: unsafe, uneasy. So Democrats are not happy. So they're going to show up. They're not happy. They're motivated, no doubt about that. Yeah, Trump's approval of immigration, economy. You can see these numbers right here. He is their disapproval on all of these things, right? Now, however, overall job approval rating, okay. We've kind of seen those kind of numbers from a lot of modern presidents. I'm not super surprised on that. That doesn't surprise me. You don't want to see that dropping in the 30s, mid 30s too much, whatnot. And again, you're going to use, especially when you're making some changes and you're doing the hard stuff before the benefits kick in, you're going to take that political, bump, if you will. And and are you making the right political investments, if you will, right? Now, here's where I think there's some brighter moments and some cause for potential optimism for the Republicans, for Trump, is okay. There's a lot of things that aren't looking great for Trump, but when you compare things to the Democrats, then all of a sudden, maybe not so bad, right? Who has a better approach? Trump and the Republicans. Economic policy, 33% to 27%. Okay, not sure. Okay, how about immigration? 39% to 29%. So that's a 10-point gap there. That's a 6-point gap here. This is the one where they're getting buzz on, and we can see some, a lot of news around that. And this is the one where people, economics are always a big time issue that can impact, the election, stuff like that. And then confidence that congressional Democrats can oppose Trump effectively. A lot, 15%, some 35%, which is down from 44%, not much, some, right? 50%. So that's where I feel like, okay, Trump and the Republican, you know what? I'll do the Yale University in my comments to the law school professor. I'll do that probably tomorrow because it's getting late. We'll probably wind down on that. But I will say this. This is where we're at right now. And this is where the work needs to be done, because I think that, there needs to be a serious shift and a serious focus on domestic policy, on getting results, affordability, Main Street policies and initiatives that are really going to move the needle for the average American out there. And I think it's got to be, the voters over donors right now. I think it's got to be domestic focus, versus foreign focus out there. But there's ways to continue to be engaged in the world, and we'll see what happens with Venezuela. We'll see what happens with Greenland. I heard there's a lot of other moving pieces in play. The Board of Peace with Gaza. Let's see what happens with Iran. There's still maybe different engagement there. How are we going to wind up on Ukraine? I've seen some different stories over there about Canada. What's Russia doing? China? There's a lot going on, and the world never stops. There's no doubt about that. We'll continue to talk about it, but I want to put a few things out there. I would say, in many respects, it was a fast pace, and first year, a lot was accomplished. I think in many ways, Trump did a lot of things. I think there's rooms for a course correction, like we're talking about. I think that it's been a little bit donor focus here for a bit here. I think it's been a little bit of foreign policy focus for a bit. I think that they're looking to make some different changes. I think what they've done in HHS and on the healthcare front, the MAHA front, the FDA has been, pretty good, pretty spot on. They did the big, beautiful bill, but there's a lot more that needs to be done there. So I think Trump being engaged, Musk is going to be engaged. I think that the right has to come together realize, okay, well, maybe we only agree on 60%, 70%, 80%, 90% of the issues. That's fine. But what's the alternative? And we're seeing that with the wealth tax, and we're seeing that with some other policies, and we're seeing that with some other politicians. If they can, put out the best candidates and at least hold the Senate, hopefully hold the House, we'll see how all the redistricting stuff sort of sorts out as well. That's definitely an impact. I think if Trump gets out there and really, and the Republicans really use this next year to focus heavy on domestic issues and affordability, on helping middle class, Main Street to be successful, getting the jobs and doing all of that, and being able to get their lives going in a productive way. I think that's having policy that enables or at least gets out of the way, then that's a big thing. And I also think there's been a wake up call with Minnesota stuff and also the wealth tax and some of these other things and the NYC election. I think people are starting to figure out, like, how do we, we're all in this together. What's the right policy? What's the way to go? So I am optimistic. There is a lot of work to do on the GOP side. Traditionally, 6-year elections, off-year elections, it's going to go to the opposing party. So it would be historically likely that the Democrats are going to beat the Republicans on those elections, and they may even overtake the House. The Senate should be much of a more likely hold for the Republicans, but we'll see. So that's where they have to get out there and do the campaigns, and candidates matter. And so it's a long ways to go here. But I think, Trump and the Republicans have some time to put some focus on it. So we'll see what the Republicans do. We'll also see on the Democrat side, because of the Democrat side, it's like, what is the future of the Democratic Party? Is it Crockett and AOC? AOC seems like she's moderating a little bit, or is it Rahm Emanuel and James Carville and stuff like that? So, TBD, lots going on, lots of happening in tech. We're going to talk about other things. We're going to talk about, definitely lots of other stuff we're going to be talking about in the future. But there's been some, with about the 1-year anniversary, I wanted to sort of take the temperature, talk about that. And of course, we talk about the national championship. So once again, good luck or congratulations to Indiana. And I welcome your comments. My name is John D. Villarreal. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night, and I will see you later.